So Nick, can you tell us how you've collaborated with Don't Nod and Microsoft on Tell Me Why?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Over 2 years ago, I met Dennis Cheng when he was in LA for E3, and he said that Xbox Game Studios was working with Don't Nod on a game and wanted to know if GLAD would be interested in consulting on the game. And I was very excited because I'd done a little consulting work in gaming before with some other projects, but this one was a different type of project and much bigger than anything I'd ever worked on in the past. So for over 2 years, I've been working with Xbox and Don't Nod on every aspect of the game. When I first met Dennis, the game was simply a story outline in a Word document. And it's kind of incredible that over 2 years later, now we're getting to the point where people are actually going to get to play the game and get to know Tyler and Allison. Every aspect of the game has really been a pleasure.
Wonderful. And August, we got a nice little intro segue to you. Do you want to talk about your experience working on the game?
Yes, of course. One of the things that I laugh about is my first recording session ever. I showed up at the studio and the entire development team was there. So it was like 10 people watching me in the recording booth. It was always a collaboration. It was always a team effort. They never wanted me to feel uncomfortable, which I never did. And that was just it was such a beautiful experience because I know that sometimes it's the exact opposite, but Don't Nod did a fantastic job, and Microsoft has been, great. The whole process has been incredible.
Great, that's wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit more about the history of trans representation in gaming and what you know of all of your years of experience?
I am a trans woman and I've been playing games for my entire life. So when I hear, that a game has a trans character in it, I feel that sense of bracing myself for what comes next, because I know that in the past it hasn't always been so good. Many trans characters in games have been treated as deceivers or villains or punchlines to a joke, and it's not always been pretty the way that trans stories have been told, because trans voices haven't always been present behind the scenes. And when you have trans stories told by non-trans people, there tends to be fascinations with certain ideas about the trans experience that just aren't true to life. And so I think having Nick and August and myself on this project is going to show through that this is a trans character that is unlike anything we've seen before. And to have not just a major character in a game, but a playable protagonist is just incredible. I think it's gonna change the entire future of what trans representation in gaming is all about.
Yeah, it's a really, really insightful. Thanks for sharing that history.
The only thing that matters is you're my brother.
So, Livy, why is representation in gaming important to you?
Yeah, I think stories are some of the most powerful tools that we as humans have to relate to one another. And it's especially powerful when you're someone who's seeing yourself in any form of media for the first time. LGBTQ audiences have traditionally been pretty underrepresented in mainstream gaming. And as for me, I remember the first time I played Tell Me Why, and I actually saw a lot of my own experiences growing up queer in a rural area. And that's something that is really important, I think, for everyone to see. It helps people understand what it's like to be just a different human. And I think games have a really unique power in a way that a lot of other media necessarily doesn't.
It doesn't matter that finding the truth feels impossible.
So I think representation and inclusivity is important in life in general, first. But in games also, and more specifically, I think because it's got a very special attribute, as games, to put you in the shoes of characters that you don't necessarily relate to. And I think that's really powerful because you may not be an astronaut or a firefighter or anything, but you can still, in a game, be that character, connect to that character. And I think that's really important because it creates empathy for other people that are not like you and that you wouldn't share their experiences otherwise. So yeah, I think the interactivity and the ability to step in those shoes is really important for games.
So only about 20% of Americans think they've ever met a transgender person in their daily life. More Americans say they've seen a ghost than think they've met a trans person. So for the vast majority of Americans, everything they know about us, they've learned largely from film, TV, games. And we know that history of media representation of trans people, which was made without any trans involvement at all, was filled with stereotypes, cliches, misinformation. People have a flawed mental template in their head of what it means to be transgender that they've learned from the media. So when we see real characters in film, TV, games that are made with care, that just show trans people as we actually are and not the stereotypes of the past, everyone who plays the game will have the opportunity to be a trans person, even in this tiny little small way, even in the context of a game, I think is something we haven't seen before and something really exciting.
Writing down my thoughts helped me realize who I am.
Elise, can you tell us what it was like attempting to do inclusive casting for Tell Me Why, and maybe talk about some of the challenges you faced and how you met those?
So for the voice casting and Tell Me Why, it was really important to both the Don't Nod team and to the Microsoft team that we cast as inclusively as possible, especially since we have Indigenous characters, people of color characters, and LGBTQ plus characters in the title. And, one aspect of that is just really that it can be actors from smaller or underrepresented communities can be harder to find. It's not that the talent's not out there, it's just that there are a lot of systemic and kind of industry-related barriers to finding those actors within kind of traditional casting channels. And then there are just things that can't be asked during the course of an audition or really any kind of hiring practice. And those anti-discrimination things are put in place for the protection of the applicant, but it also coincidentally makes it difficult or a little bit more complicated to determine the lived experience of someone that you might be auditioning and assess whether or not it correlates to your character. But I think it's important just to look at your script and consult your narrative team and really figure out what the most important lived experience is, assuming that you're trying to do inclusive casting.
That was awesome.